So, you want to become a better photographer. I think we all do, to a certain extent. If you want to up your game, there is one thing you need to be doing with your camera. I'm going to discuss that today, and I guarantee you, focus on what I tell you, and you are on your path to becoming a better photographer, starting now. Hi friends. So I was listening to some tutorials today just as background noise when a couple beginning photography ones came on. And I couldn't help but be reminded of when I first started shooting seriously. It seemed like I couldn't find anything that covered just the basics or a video that didn't assume I knew fundamentals of photography. They just sort of breezed over things that I didn't know what they were, such as ISO, aperture, shutter speed. And so today I want to make a video putting myself back where I began in my shoes, first starting out, and one I wish existed when I first started shooting. So, drumroll please. The one thing you need to be doing is shooting on manual mode, not automatic. Now I know it sounds like a colossal pain in the ass, and to start with, it is. But ultimately you'll find you have a lot more control over your environment and what you're shooting and the outcomes of those shots that it makes literally a night and day difference. You have my word, I will do another video explaining these more in depth. But to begin with, and for the purposes of this video, let's cover shutter speed, aperture, and ISO in a way that we can all understand. 1. Aperture. Aperture is a hole in your lens that controls how much light can pass through that lens. Now, by changing the aperture value on your camera, you either increase or decrease the amount of light that gets through that hole. Now, apertures are measured in something called f-stops, and f-stops, for learning purposes, look like this. F/whatever number it is. Now, one fun fact is these are actually opposites, and it's helpful to think of them that way. So the larger the f-stop number, the smaller the aperture hole, and the less light gets in. The smaller the f-stop number, the larger the aperture hole, and thus the more light gets in. So the practical application here is if I need more light into my lens to hit my sensor, I will make the f-stop number smaller. If I need less light, say on a sunny day, I can make the f-stop number larger. Higher number, less light. Lower number, more light. I assure you I will cover this more in detail in a subsequent video, but for now, for all intents and purposes, that is all you need to know. Number 2, shutter speed. Shutter speed you can think of just like shutters on your window. Now, this and aperture go together, and I will explain that more down the road, but for now, whereas the aperture controls the amount of light that gets through your lens, the shutter speed determines how long the sensor in your camera is exposed to that light. Shutter speed is expressed in fractions of a second. It looks like this. Now, when you set the shutter speed on your camera, you're telling it simply how quickly or slowly you want it to open and close that shutter. Unlike aperture, shutter speed is not opposite, so it's just like fractions. 1/4000th of a second is going to be a much faster shutter speed than 1/30th of a second. And now for the useful part. With shutter speed, I'm basing it off of whatever I'm shooting, how fast it's moving. Say I'm at a basketball game or taking a picture of wildlife. If it's moving quickly, I'm gonna want a faster shutter speed. That's it. And finally, number 3 is ISO. What's it stand for? Doesn't matter. I'll tell you later. It's never helped me. But what it does is simply controls the sensor's sensitivity to light. Now ISO, again, we appreciate this, is straightforward, just like shutter speed and unlike aperture. So the higher the ISO, the more light gets let in. If I'm shooting in bright daylight, my ISO can be set lower, say between 50 and 250. If it's getting dark out, I'm shooting a sunset, I might want to bump that up to 1200, 1250. And I know my cameras go up to, I think, 32,000, which seems unnecessary and adds an element of grain that we don't ultimately want in our photos. So I found the best practice is to keep your ISO as low as you possibly can. But rule of thumb, the brighter it is out, the lower your ISO. The darker it is out, the higher your ISO. That's it. That is all for this video. I hope it's been helpful. In my subsequent videos, I will cover how all of these 3 things, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, work together, and also how you can isolate each one to learn incrementally, as I did. You can do that using aperture priority or shutter priority on your camera, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. Have an awesome Friday. See you soon. If you like this video, found it helpful, want to see more, please hit subscribe.